It's great to have you today. Today, we'll continue part three of our Thoughts on Character series. And of course, the series revolves around my book, Character, the Leader's Bloodline. The book includes surveys, my own thoughts on leadership and personal character. And I also had several opportunities to sit down with some great people. I interviewed university presidents, professors, angel investors, politicians, and even the former director of the CIA. So I had wonderful opportunities to interview great people. You can read about those interviews. You can read all of them in my book, Character, the Leader's Bloodline. But today, in part three of our series, I wanted to talk about a psychologist. And we sat down and talked about a few things. But I want to start by saying this. Is love sustainable? Many groups in society find it impossible to sustain a feeling of intense passion and love in marriage. They've come to find that love fluctuates. Even people dating find that. Unfortunately, people find themselves on a never ending mission and ride from person to person, grasping for intense feelings and leaving once the intensity of a new relationship subsides. They believe that humans grow and change along with the passing feeling of love. They even find love similar to fleeting vapors that rise from metal pots as they rest on hot stoves. When speaking of romantic love, I got a chance to speak with Dr. Willard Harley, and he's come to the conclusion that romantic love is sustainable. Others would, of course, fiercely disagree, especially many of the divorcees on earth today. But Dr. Harley stands as one of the few that believes that he can not only stimulate love, but he can keep romantic love alive throughout the duration of a marriage. Now, some of you listening may be thinking, why are we talking about love and marriage when we're supposed to be focusing on leadership? This is supposed to be a talk on leadership. Well, those with terrible marriage or those that lack sexual discipline often find their misery at home coming to work with. I'm sure many of us know politicians or have read about university professors that have had an immense fall because of their lack of self discipline, just an immense fall. After those years of study, after those years of work, building all those relationships, going up the quote unquote corporate ladder, the lack of self discipline in their personal life spills over into their professional life. I think within the, not I think, I know within the last several weeks, we've seen the governor of New York, one of the governors of New York actually step down from his political position, a very strong position that he had because of what allegedly or seems to be a lack of self discipline. When I talked to Dr. Harley, we had a great conversation. I remember speaking to him for maybe 45 to 50 minutes. He was generous with his time because he's a busy man. If you want to read some of his books, he has great books on love and marriage, and he also has a one book in particular that's sold extremely well. Probably about 5 million copies have been sold by now, well over 4 million copies of his book, His Needs, Her Needs. That's the title, His Needs, Her Needs by Willard Harley. But while I was sitting down and speaking with him, I asked him a question. And my question was, is there a major flaw you typically find in leaders who have a scandal or fail to reach their potential? And he said, I say one of the greatest flaws is infidelity. And then I quickly spoke up and I said, why did you say that? And he said again quickly, infidelity is a huge scourge. When you cheat on your spouse, you cheat on God. And then he went on to say, it's a gigantic sin and politics is seen everywhere. He continued by saying, I'm a counselor who counsels politicians, and they're basically having affairs left and right. And I think it's a huge drain on their happiness, effectiveness, and on their life. He continued by saying, people who have genuinely good marriages tend to be politicians, or tend to be great politicians, excuse me. But there are very few people who do that. There are a lot of cheaters out there. And then we ended our discussion. I say all that to say sometimes we believe that someone's marriage may not someone's marriage may not affect their ability as a leader in a nonprofit or a business or a university, or someone's lack of self-discipline may not affect them in the new company they're building or the IPO that's just getting off the ground. But I beg to differ. It's extremely important. It's extremely important. And if you don't believe me, I'll tell you this today. Check the paper for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Check online magazines for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Check the highly touted news engines, the university blogs, the information we see about politicians. The check the Harvard Review or the Wall Street Journal for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And if you don't see someone who's worked decades on establishing themselves in a career in their field of business or their field of politics or their field of law, and I guarantee you, if you take 3 to 4 weeks for those who don't believe me or those who can't understand why sexual discipline is so important in leadership, count how many people you see lose their position because they couldn't discipline themselves sexually. I hope this helps you. I hope you take heed to the warning. Take care.